Welcome to Leadership Perspectives Nantucket. Today we're joined by Barry Sternlicht. Barry, thanks for being on the show.
Pleasure.
So just a quick rundown. You're basically the CEO of Starwood Capital Group, which is a private investment firm you founded in 1991, I believe, focusing on global real estate, hotel management, oil and gas, and energy infrastructure. One role. Some of the other roles are you're chairman of the Starwood Property Trust, which is the largest REIT in the country, I understand, or one of the largest?
It's the largest commercial lender in the country
Okay.
in real estate.
Great. You're also chairman of the Crystal Maker Baccarat and co-chairman of the newly formed Invitation Homes, which merged recently with Starwood Waypoint Homes. So you're now the largest owner and operator.
The deal hasn't closed yet, but
Okay.
yes, that will be the case when it closes.
So that you'll be owning and operating single-family homes.
82,000 of them.
That's all. So wow, that's a lot of roles, a lot of leadership roles. How do you find time to be on Nantucket, and also what is your Nantucket story? When did you first come here?
Okay, let's start with the latter.
Okay.
I think it was actually my mom's on island with me this weekend, and I think and my brother's here too. He's not here that often, and they asked me when I first started coming here, so it's fresh in my mind. I think I came here once or twice in college. I went to Brown.
Yeah.
That would be the early 80s.
Yeah.
And but I moved to Chicago after business school. I went to Harvard Business School, and I was looking for a job, and I interviewed with a fellow named Tommy Taylor and the Bass Brothers, and he and Richard Rainwater. They had houses here. They used to come up from Texas in the summer. So one of my interviews was out here, and I thought it was fantastic. So I got married, and I came here in 1991 when I had my first child, and pretty much came every summer. We kind of bopped from here to the vineyard, spent a couple of years in the vineyard.
Okay.
We even dallied with the Hamptons, which I didn't really like, and so and my wife and I, we moved. We got a place here.
Yeah.
And I think I've been here full-time, like a full-time, owning a house now for probably 15 years.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you're one of the few that actually tried out the vineyard and Nantucket.
Yeah, we went to all three.
That's good.
You know, I grew up in Connecticut, in Stamford, Connecticut, and I moved to Chicago, moved back to Greenwich, and so it was going to be our summer home. And
Yeah.
I just like the vibe of Nantucket more than the other two islands.
Yeah. Well, I would agree.
The casualness and the lack of pretension.
Yeah.
I love that the fanciest car is the fanciest Jeep you can see.
Yeah. And there's lots of them.
Occasionally you see a Land Rover, but mostly we're Jeeps.
Yeah. Almost out. They almost don't fit in.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of the things you would like to do on the island, and what are some of the things that you support?
Well, I play a lot of golf. Love the ocean. Love the shore. Bike. Work out.
Yeah. Good.
Shop. Go to the art galleries.
Yeah.
Eat very well.
Yeah.
And we support a lot of the charities on the island, including the main focus was the Dreamland Theater, which I now must be back probably almost 10 years.
Yeah.
When it was shot, and I was living out in Neil Point, and I thought it was a debacle that this beautiful theater that was sort of the center of the community was closed. And I had met Jim Pilata and Philippe Lafont, and we all were bidding to save the theater. We found out that it was owned by a bank that was foreclosing on the developer, and so we formed a group, myself, Jim Pilata, and Philippe, who are island residents, and we started bidding on the note, and we were bidding against somebody. And we didn't understand, we didn't know who we were bidding against. And the price kept going up, and so this is stupid. We found out it was Wendy Schmidt. And we both wanted to make it a not-for-profit. And so we got together, bought the note, and then had quite an experience raising the money and designing the property. And being a real estate guy, I was the real estate guy in the group.
Right.
And we had one budget was like $38 million, and it was so expensive, and I knew it shouldn't cost that much. So I threw out the developer and the guy who was with us on the board who was involved. And then we brought in another guy who helped me build one of my W hotels. And he came in and right-sized the project. I think it was like 26, 27 million. It was still a fortune.
Great. Yeah.
But it was tumultuous hard. It was hard to raise the capital at the time because I think people thought these affluent people would build it. And we while we supported it, we wanted it to be, it's for the island. And we wanted the broad support of the island. And fundraising, it's been great. It's great, and I've been an active member for a long time. of the board.
Yeah.
Trying to make it self-sufficient. Most people don't even know it's a not-for-profit. So
Right.
my latest contribution is the flower boxes in front.
Well, they look fabulous.
I told the new director, Joe Hale, that he needed to have a softer street image because it looked a little like a warehouse.
Yeah, and you know about street image.
I know about images a little bit.
Yeah. Well, thank you for staying with it, because as being a young family on the island, we enjoy the theater all the time, and just the extension of the offerings in the venue is amazing. It's not just about movies.
Well, we from the start, Angela Rainey joined us and other locals, Bill Liddell, and we wanted to have a broad product offering, and we wanted the island to have a place. One of the things that struck me about the island was the suicide rate was so high, and the kids here in the winter, it was depressing to have this theater closed. It was good for the merchants to get it open, get people downtown, and when it's raining, it's something to do. So it was really important, I thought. It was really, really critical to sort of cement downtown, and good for everybody. The merchants, it's interesting, some merchants supported us and others didn't. Some people thought we were going to be a competitor or something. And in the design, we were going to put in a cafe and sell coffee and have a reading room. But Angela voiced a very strong opinion that we didn't want to compete with anyone in the commercial sense. That's been a problem, frankly, for the theater, because it doesn't have that as a revenue source, and we lose money all winter long, and we make a little bit of money in the summer. But if we don't raise money, it doesn't break even.
Yeah, that's true. So shifting back to kind of your multifaceted roles, how would you describe you as a leader? Like, what's your leadership style like?
I guess people would say I'm firm. It depends what I'm leading. I think it's the nature of different businesses. You have different payroll structures and different incentive programs. So when I was running Starwood Hotels, which I started back in 1994, and I was the founder and chairman, and I glued together all these companies to create Starwood Hotels. I bought Westin Hotels, I bought ITT Sheridan, and then I created W Hotels. That I had 120,000 employees and 80 countries when I was done. After 3 years, we were an $8 million company. 3 years later, we were a $20 billion company.
Amazing.
I was 38 when I bought all those companies, and I had no idea what I was doing. But when you motivate literally 100,000 people, you have to do it with moral character and good deeds. And one of the things, I got credit for being creative, and I won the best CEO in the country from Institutional Investor magazine in lodging. I never really got the credit for creating the culture that was, we were proud to be Starwood. We did all these walks, diabetes walks, Chicago Cares, New York Cares. I said that if we could, the best PR was for the hotel management to integrate into the community. And then people would want the properties to succeed. And they'd book us because we were a good-natured people. Also, it was a way to bring together all of these people from different backgrounds. St. Regis Hotels didn't want anything to do with W. Sheridan, St. Regis didn't want to talk to Sheridan. And so we had to figure out a way to unite these people. And the way to do that was building a company with a good soul. And so I think that is different when you're motivating a guy who's making $40,000 a year versus Starwood Capital Group, which is a high-powered, high-intense Harvard Business School graduate kind of A guys who are making lots of money. So that, and also the way we manage money is in funds, and the funds are commingled, meaning that we don't get paid deal by deal, we get paid on the whole fund. So if you have a bad deal, like you could be working 10 years to work it out, and one bad deal can hurt a whole entire decade of work. So the stakes are pretty high. So I don't tolerate sloppiness. I think hope is not a business strategy, I like to say.
For sure.
Brutal honesty. I think Good to Great, which Jim Collins wrote, know what's wrong, not because you want to beat yourself over the head, but because you want to improve all the time. I like that book, Who Moved My Cheese, I think it's called. I read it when I was running Starwood. It takes about 3 minutes. Everyone should read it. And it's like the world's always changing. Just get over it, right? And enjoy it, because in business, the things that I was influenced by are things like Kodak or Howard Johnson, companies that disappeared, literally disappeared. IBM is doing a little bit of a disappearing act right now. So, these companies, the FANG companies, the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Netflix, the Googles, any incumbent could have been there. They had the balance sheet, they had the cash, they had the resources, they had the people, but they missed the opportunity. So I think, for me, I'm always thinking about what's the next move. And I want my people to be creative, speak their voice. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned, I actually am a pretty compassionate, empathetic person by nature. I can cry at movies, and I cry even reading books. Most people wouldn't believe that, but I think that makes it hard to run a business because you get, I always think of the analogy of being a coach of a football team, right? You want to win the Super Bowl every year, right? So you have a great quarterback, but he's not the best in the industry, right? So you always got to keep you got to be loyal to your guy, but you got to keep a lookout for the guy that's going to take you to the Super Bowl. And it's super hard to do that, right? Because you love this guy. He's a great third baseman, but there's a better one, right? And I think if you don't do that, if you don't continue to improve your people, and some people, then I think my biggest problem has been not realizing that either somebody didn't want to do the job they were assigned, or they weren't good at it, and get frustrated with them, and that creates a tense environment. And there was a fellow that I hired, one of the few CEOs of the hotel group when I was running Starwood. There was 2 divisions. We had Caesars, casinos, and we had hotels.
Right.
One of the guys said to me, "You're doing the whole organization a great disservice by not letting the bad apples go." And so while I was thinking I was being compassionate, I was hurting the whole organization. And I think that's a good lesson. Just came up this morning, actually. Yeah. And I was talking to my COO in Greenwich this morning, and about somebody who's not cutting it. And I said, he either improves or he has to leave. Right. And it's fairly black and white. It's not so easy when you're dealing with people. I've never found it easy to fire someone.
Side of the business is the most difficult. So
and also the other thing is the millennials. I mean, this is a different generation. They are harder to motivate. It is. And
what have you learned about that generation, and how do you lead them?
The jury's out. There's a few diamonds in the rough. I mean, what I need are people who really want to, they get up in the morning and think about things to do and what could go wrong with our investments. And curious George, right? They have to be super curious about the world. And what are the things I call them the knuck-knucks, things you don't know. Right. So I can ask you a question like, where was that shirt manufactured? But I can't, there's questions I don't even know to ask you, right? Because they're not that's true learning. I call those things the knuck-knucks. Yeah. And there was an example in my first deal coming out of business school. I was supposed to buy an apartment building in San Francisco for my old firm. And I was all prepared. I was a Harvard Business School grad. I'm an arrogant little young man. And I walk into the meeting. I know everything. I've talked to every tenant. I've counted the bricks. I'm ready for this meeting. And the investment committee says to me, one of the senior guys says to me, "Well, how far apart are the parking lot stripes?" I'm like, "Excuse me?" He says, "Well, are they 12 feet or 14 feet?" I'm like, what possible relevance could that be? Well, if they're 14 feet, we can make them 12 feet. We can sell extra parking spots. I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of that, right? It's things I didn't know. And that really, when I always try when I'm doing due diligence trying to buy something, I always say, well, what are the questions I'm not asking you that I should ask? Right. As opposed to me trying to look smart or be so. I approach everything, and I think it's destabilizing to my team because I always think we're stupid. Yeah. I mean, we're going to get, and I also see my compatriots who've done extremely well get blindsided by their success. And I think the most important thing is to keep your intellectual humility. You basically begin to assume things. Right. And your past success leads you to be kind of, I know that. And you don't know that, know. And like I said, the world's always changing, and there's new data points. Right. And there's new things to change your thesis, your investment thesis.
So you really want millennials to have creative thought, creative problem solving,
Yeah, and loyalty, dedication. I think the generation's quick to change their jobs. And I should speak. I was in 3 jobs in 2 years out of college. So, but once you find something you like, I think you should do it. I think also I think doing good and doing business are in like diversity. I think those are just good business practices, and they lead to successful companies. So it's not for the politically correct move. I mean, you have a diverse customer base. Why wouldn't you have a diverse company? Right. To understand their needs in the housing market, for example, in the Hispanic communities of Southern Florida, you build a different product for that ethnic group than you do for Palm Beach, because they have smaller bedrooms, bigger communal rooms. A lot of times they have their family with them, their moms. So you're building to different markets, and if you address that, you will succeed in business. I think the millennials, I'm worried about some of them. I'm worried about this like culture, because if you only like and get fed things you like, you won't learn about things you don't like that you might like or don't know you don't like, because they just give you your likes. Yeah. So I always talk about the iPhone. I mean, nobody would have liked it because nobody knew it existed, right? Fortunately, it broke through and everything else, but smaller things where people, the communities, the micro marketing to communities. I worry about that. I worry about people not experiencing new things and
Pushing
being
themselves, pushing their
insular
boundaries.
as opposed to being open to the world. And the whole social media is geared towards that. And I think that's a little dangerous.
Yeah.
It's a very, I mean, I have 3 kids, so I get to watch these millennials.
Firsthand.
Yeah. And they want to do good.
Yeah.
And I assume that, they want to do good, they want to succeed, but they also are it seems to be a less threatened generation.
Yeah.
Even though they're angry.
More comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we do know that millennials do want to be associated to something meaningful and impactful.
Right.
But I think that crosses all generations.
Yep.
It's that whole thing, find your passion.
Yep.
We all struggle with that.
Yep.
And I think once you do, then you can really hit your stride.
Yep.
So, well, we're going to take a short break.
Okay.
This is Leadership Perspectives Nantucket, and we're with Barry Sternlicht today, and we will be right back.
Our goal was we wanted to work with people that we loved. We wanted to make a difference. We wanted to see if we could walk our talk, live what we said, and we wanted to have fun.
My father, who was fundamentally a philosopher more than anything, and the philosophy that he's been talking about for many, many years, is that if you create a clear vision and if you take care of your people, phenomenal things happen.
We talk about the words leading at a higher level. I think that's really the essence of what we are about. We want others to also lead at the highest level possible.
People want to be the kind of companies that Ken Blanchard writes about. So our job is take that information, put it into practical learnings, and work with companies to make companies more valuable from a personnel and intrinsic perspective.
Welcome back to Leadership Perspectives Nantucket. Today we're joined by Barry Sternlicht. So Barry, you're leading multiple generations, as we were just talking about, and multiple entities essentially and different types of operations. How do you get feedback? How do you practice self-awareness?
Some people would say I don't.
And that's
It's
fair
interesting.
too.
I think I think leaders have to absorb uncertainty. So I think leadership is about absorbing uncertainty and creating a direction and completing, making sure that the organization stays on track, whatever track strategy it is you and your team come up with. I've been successful because over years, I think, developed a good team and brought in outside expertise where we had, and continue to look at where we have holes, bring in new people that have the skill set we don't have. In my organization, we do 360s. We do the full reviews of each of our guys, and then we take them very seriously, and they form a really significant part of the compensation structure. So it's a little hard because everybody gives everybody the scales 1 to 5, and then everyone's a 5.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not helpful, guys.
Right, yeah.
So we've taken a few years to get it down. We used to do them blind, like people would know, so they could be honest.
Yeah.
But now I think the culture is strong enough that we don't necessarily do them blind. Although we have to make sure we have, both peers, leaders, and subordinates doing the reviews. And sometimes so for me, I think the feedback I get is from the duration of the longevity of my employees and from the returns our investors are getting.
Right.
I think we wouldn't be, I think it's our 26th year in business, and today we're a $50 billion asset manager. So, and our clients, I always tell our guys, just tell them the truth. That's sort of been my guiding light. I take our fiduciary duty incredibly seriously,
Right.
and I align our interests with our partners. And I tell them the truth. And 9/11 happened, and at the hotel company, our cash flow dropped like 50%. And that's actually the easiest time to run a company because there's no BS going on,
Right.
And everyone's rowing together. Nobody's going like this. We're all trying to figure out how to survive. And then, when 2007, 2008, the financial crisis hit, that's a really tough time. You see a lot of good things get flushed out with the hurricane, the financial hurricane, and a lot of work goes to nothing. Good ideas are wrecked. And it takes a long time to, I think, but we were brutally honest with our investors. And, we stopped our management fees, for example, on our funds voluntarily. Nobody asked us to save money for the guys.
Yeah.
And at one point, we had a whole bunch of loans coming due, and we couldn't refinance them. The banks weren't going to refinance them. So we went to our investors, who are some of the largest sovereign wealth funds and institutions, pension funds in the United States, high net worth families. We said, we need about $50 million to save these properties, and there's real equity here. There's real value for you. And if you don't give us the $50 million, they're going to be flush. We're going to give them back to the lenders. And they said, well, how everyone's coming to us. How do we know that, that's not throwing good money after bad? And I said, well, here's what we'll do. We'll put up 10% of the money that we're asking you for, subordinate to you. So we'll be the first money to be lost if these values go down and we don't save your properties. And I just did it spur of the moment.
Right.
And we may be the only fund in the United States that's ever done anything like that I know of.
Putting your money where your mouth is.
So our funds back then were, I think that fund was $1.8 billion, and this new fund we're closing now is at least $6-something billion. So it's paid off for us to do the right thing. And my father influenced me that way because I was a trader once. I was an arbitrage trader. And, he said, you should always, he said, do you want to look at a little green screen for the rest of your life? And that wasn't great advice because I would have been a hell of a good arbitrage trader. I would have a great lifestyle, easier than traveling the world like I do all the time. But the second thing he says, just look in the mirror and know that you always did the right thing.
Right.
And you always, do the best you can. And that is my philosophy. Just lay it all on the table. Do the best you can. It's all you can do.
Yeah.
And you should never look back because,
Right.
Just gave it your best.
Would you say the financial meltdown was one of those key learning experiences in your life, or are there others?
I've had a lot. I could write a book. I've had a lot of odd things happen, strange people, people who lied to me in a deal, blatantly lied. I hired a really bad guy to replace me at Starwood Hotels, and I figured it out a little too late, and we hired him. I warned the board, and they fired him for cause 2 years later. But that was a miserable experience. Cause I basically, and the media got it all wrong. They said that, I was pushed out. I actually quit. And their own paper wrote a story that I spent a year looking for my successor at Starwood Hotels. And I finally found a guy, and I knew, Barry Diller, who's a big interactive media, he's a big CEO, and he said, what did you do? And I was like, what do you mean, what did I do? He said, he's a pathological liar. So that was really hard. And at one point I had one of my board members try to oust me from Starwood Hotels, and that turned into an interesting situation too. Even though our stock was performing, we were the best performing lodging company in the world over the 10 years I ran the company. But so you see strange things happen. People, loyalty, lack of loyalty. Occasionally people do things you just can't understand, like what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Those are really hard. It's really hard to repair the damage that does, because at the end of the day, one of the hardest things to do in an investment world is interview for judgment. And you don't really know people's judgment, and they make a big mistake. And it's almost like, do I ever trust their judgment again?
Yeah.
I actually like hiring people who've seen adversity, that they don't think the world just grows like this.
Yeah.
And they've had a career moment where they've busted themselves. But I really like the discipline of athletes and also military people.
Good combination.
They do things in an orderly, organized fashion, and they're dedicated, right? So,
So are those some of the traits you look for now that when you're looking for new leaders in your firm?
It's funny, like young people we used to hire today because, from places like Wharton. And our best guy right now is from Princeton and was a language major. So I think we overdosed on people who could add.
Yeah.
We need people who can think. And I was a liberal arts major. I don't actually think the math required to invest in property, for example, or even our renewables businesses is this is not geometry or calculus.
Right.
This is basic.
Know the numbers, yeah.
Yeah, I also think one thing that's really helped me, that I learned for me, was having a good memory.
Yeah.
You know, I remember details, and I remember numbers, and I remember. I can probably tell you the hotel room count of most every hotel in Starwood Hotels. I haven't been there 10 years. There's no longer Starwood Hotels, by the way. It's now a division of Marriott.
Right.
So, you know, it's interesting. You learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
And I got a little numb running a public company. I run 2 public companies now, but they're both. We advise them. I'm not actually an employee of those 2 companies, Starwood Waypoint or Star Property Trust. I'm the CEO, but they pay us a fee to manage the assets. And being in the public market, you know, and getting the ridicule and then the glory, it just gets a little tiring. You get numb. And
your performance is for all to see.
yeah, but our performance was fine.
Yeah,
you know. But but now I'm tougher. Now I'm smarter. I'm much smarter about, you know, a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I do giggle. I mean, I don't love getting old, but I love the experience it's brought me.
Yeah.
I was just laughing because we're just approving a loan on a property in Phoenix, and a new Ritz-Carlton that's going to be built in the property trust. And there was a Ritz-Carlton there, and I know that it's down the road from the Phoenician, and I used to own the Phoenician.
Right.
So I'm like, what happened to it?
Yeah.
And I want to see the profit and loss statement. I can intuit it in my mind what it should look like.
Right.
So having done as much as I've done, which is quite a bit in the property world, it's helpful.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not making, and it's the worst thing is to make the same mistake twice, right? Everyone's going to make mistakes. You just got to learn from every one of them. The other thing I'd say about self-awareness, which you mentioned about me, is people that recognize their own mistakes. You know, I want to hear that I was wrong, right? I don't want excuses. That's not that guy's fault. I made a mistake, and I learned something.
Yeah.
Then it's okay, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but I think, again, arrogance in investing can really, it might work for you. It might blow you up to smithereens.
And blame. Yeah.
And blame. And I mean, anybody, you know, and the other thing you learn about is timing is very humbling. The world, things you can control and things you can't control.
Right.
And the things you can't control, don't lose a lot of sleep over, because
you can't control it.
Can't control it.
Yeah.
Right.
It
So
takes a certain amount of discipline to get there.
Yeah,
right?
and I don't get I don't get too bogged down on that.
Yeah.
You know, the things I get upset when we just built a hotel in Brooklyn, the One Brooklyn Bridge, and we didn't open the pool till like August. I'm like, why wasn't it open in June and July? We forgot the permit. Why do we not have the permit? We have fire pits on the roof. It's the most amazing view of Manhattan you've ever seen.
That's
it's
a great
spectacular.
property. Yeah.
And the fire pits we don't have a permit to open the fire pits. I'm like, how could that be, guys?
Yeah, right.
So, you know, but life is, I get accused, and sometimes I was ridiculed at start for being so into the details. But it is the details. A lot of
You're in the detail
you think
business.
macro.
Yeah.
My job is to think macro and invest micro. And the profit and loss statement on a real estate deal is completely dependent on what was actually built.
Right.
And MBAs don't. You know, it's a house.
Get
What is
that.
it? A good house?
Yeah.
Is it like facing the right direction? Are there windows? I've been to hotels where the wall of the hotel facing the ocean is solid.
Yeah.
In fact, the one South Beach that we built, the original, we put the staircase right on the ocean wall.
Yeah.
I was like,
Stairs don't need a view.
right. Stairs don't need a view. How dumb
Unless
is
it's
this?
glass
But that's
stairs.
you know, it's and it's
Little
I-
details, or those are big details too. That can
Yeah,
make or break
but
a deal.
details. I think people.
Yeah.
You know, well, anyway, there's success. I mean, I think in when I do like W Hotels or now One Hotels, Baccarat Hotels, I'm trying to surprise and delight the guest. Now you call it an Instagram moment. Like, does anyone need to take a picture of this? And if you haven't succeeded, then you know, then do something different.
Right.
And different means, you know, not silly, but something that'll grab some attention.
Sure.
And that's your
carry
marketing
that.
today.
Yeah.
People market for you.
Now, Barry, what about key people in your life? You always had a tremendous amount of experiences. Do you have mentors? Do you have, you know, your parents? You mentioned your dad. Was he a key person
Both
in your
of my
life?
parents.
or
My
your
dad
mom?
taught me to be tough because he survived Nazi Germany. So and he never was captured, so he's called a survivor. But he fought. He was 9 years old when the war broke out, and he basically took over, raised his family.
Yeah, amazing.
And his father was sent to a Siberian labor camp, so he had my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, his sister, and an uncle, and they wound up living in the mountains of Czechoslovakia and fighting with the partisans, and he killed a few Germans. So
Yeah.
my dad was a tough cookie. He died about 2 years ago.
Wow.
And but he, you know, my worst day, it was better than his best day in that period, right? So I think that was like, take it in perspective, dude. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Everything
Total
is fantastic
Yeah.
compared to the life that he had. And he actually divided his life. He didn't really talk about the war ever. I only really got to it with him when I was in my late 30s, when I took him back to Poland and the parts of, he'd never been back in 50 years, and I took him back in the middle of buying ITT Sheridan, actually.
Wow, that must have
Because I
been
promised
quite
him I'd take him.
Yeah.
It was quite something, yeah. It was amazing, actually. And walking, then later on we went to Israel together, and he walked into the it's called Yad Vashem, which is a museum dedicated to the memory of the Holocaust. And in the museum, there's a huge wall and train tracks of the ghetto. And there's a picture, it's black and white, and there's a picture of the commandant, standing in his balcony, the German commandant looking over the ghetto. And my dad says, I was standing there, I could smell the bakery, the muffins in the morning. And he started to tell his story, and all the people in the museum came around and started listening to him. Because this was like, he didn't talk about this for 50 years.
Yeah.
And and I walked away. I was too emotional. It was crazy. And then my mom, I'm a frustrated artist. So my mom is an artist.
Okay.
And she's creative and very personable. And I'm more like my mom that way than my dad, who was, I would say, introverted. My mom is a serious extrovert and fun. And she's a school teacher, born in Brooklyn, and has a master's in biology, but she's been a teacher and then a stockbroker.
Did she teach art or
no? But I went to Silvermine Guild for Artists when I was a
Okay.
kid, and I painted. And she just told me, you can't be an artist because you're going to starve. So I paint with hotels. You know, that's the part of
I
my
like
job
that. That's a
I
great.
love working. I'm in the Interior Design Hall of Fame.
Yep, I saw
One
that.
of only two businessmen, so
that's your creative outlet.
That's the most important thing I've ever gotten. So in business, I really admire Howard Schultz from Starbucks.
Sure.
I think there's an interesting example. A guy write a paper about coffee and gets a D in college, right? And he pursues it. And not only then pursuing an idea in a mature industry that was actually coffee consumption was declining.
Right.
So classic analysis would be, this is a dumb idea, right? And he says, no, I can carve out this business. And not only did he build this giant company, but he turned coffee sales around.
Yeah.
Because it became an experience. So you branded yourself with what you call it affordable luxury.
Right.
And he's a friend. Actually, I'm going to see him in a week. He spoke for me at my global conference at Starwood Hotels. And then the ruthless execution. I mean, they can open a store that's locally relevant in like 3 months after signing a lease.
Yeah.
And thousands of them.
Right.
And then they innovate at the product level. Right, they come up with a Frappuccino, and I use that Starbucks as an example because I tried to do that at Starwood Hotels, which we somewhat succeeded, and I try to do it today. When you're giant, that usually means you're lumbering, but you need to be giant. And I said I'd have to teach the elephant how to dance, right? So the cappuccino, was invented somewhere in San Diego, and it made its way up the corporate ranks to Howard's desk, and he said, "Let's do the Frappuccino."
Yeah.
So let's do this.
Right.
So when the field invents for you, then the executive says, my job is done."
That is
right.
very
But your
true.
organization has to catch it.
Yeah.
Right. You have to be willing to catch it. So for me, my example was the curved shower rod.
Yeah.
So all the shower rods had been, and it got to my desk. Some guy in Canada came up with said, we should curve the shower rod. And I said, how much is it going to cost? He said, $13. I said, let's do it everywhere.
That's
and
great.
today you see curved shower rods at Hampton Inns and everywhere.
Yeah,
And
that
instead
was
of having
you
to
guys.
fight that shower curtain, you have more room. And it's like,
Right.
this is a great idea. And people, the heavenly beds, or the beds in W hotels.
Yeah.
That was my bed for my house.
Right.
It's a simple thing. How much easier
So
can you
that
get?
is a true story.
It is a true
the
story.
bed from your house.
My wife bought the house on the mattress at 1-800 Mattress. And I said, this is so comfortable.
Yeah.
Why is my hotel bed so crappy?
Yeah.
And if I was really smart, I would have bought Sealy and Simmons, because I think we sold like 5 million mattresses. Basically,
bet.
every hotel in the country changed their mattresses.
Well, you did. You set us all up for extreme comfort. Thank you.
We have new beds, organic beds in the one hotels, which are fun.
But you're right. If innovation can come up from the bottom, you've got it made.
I mean,
it's
and your
coming down.
organization doesn't reject it along the way, and it gets to your desk.
Yeah, well,
right?
they're cheering each other on.
Right.
You know.
And then listening to your customer, and then you have to sort through it all.
Yeah. So what's next? So you mentioned Hotel One. I know that's a fabulous new brand. I've been to the Brooklyn, probably awesome. Can't wait to go to Miami next.
Miami, Central Park.
It's a great.
We just bought an asset. We're making one in Los Angeles. We're working on one in Sunnyvale, Salt Lake City, Cabo, Paris.
Nice.
Sanya, China. So I kind of wanted, because I like design, so I wanted to do another hotel brand. And this time I'd own it instead of W, which I built in Starwood Hotels. And but I had met Blake Mikowski from Tom Shoes, and they give away a pair of shoes for every pair of shoes you buy. And I wanted to do something that was socially good and make my kids proud of me. So it's not just about money. So I decided we were going to do the ultimate green hotel chain, luxury green. Teach people they could live well and live green, and live a more eco-conscious life. So, and you wouldn't have to sleep in burlap and eat carrots. It's farm-to-table restaurants, and we try, like Brooklyn, more than half the furniture is the materials are locally sourced. We have no plastic in the hotel. We try to have no plastic. We have boxed water.
Right.
We have no paper. We took a little risk. I had a huge fight with my partner in I think it's ongoing in Miami, because I didn't want to have Coke in the refrigerator. I said, they can buy a Coke, they can bring it in, I'm not going to support it. I don't want the can.
Right.
So, I say we're not a brand, we're a cause, and we're teaching people they can live well. And something like 60% of our guests say they change something in their life when they stay with us. So,
that's amazing.
It's really, it's really exciting. And it's been more successful than I actually would have thought, given how I'm so busy with other stuff. But the team is great, and hotels, New York were at 96% occupancy last night. I just saw the numbers.
That's back.
Brooklyn was 88.
That's great.
Yeah.
In August.
In August. Good. Yeah, it's good, because the city comes alive in September.
Yeah, it sure does.
So, no, it's been really exciting. It's been fun. It's hard. They're really hard to do. And they've turned out to be more expensive than I would have hoped. And we have to get the cost down in order to make them proliferate.
You're breaking new ground. Well, explain to our viewers and listeners, what's the difference between a hotel that paints itself green and then a hotel that is green? I mean, you just shared some great examples of that.
Paint green, I mean, I ran Starwood, so when the crap hit the fan, we all said, we won't wash your sheets unless you ask us to, or we won't change your towels, and that was painted green.
Okay.
It was better from a conservation, but we were really, our motivation was saving money.
Yeah.
And then consumers got that. There was nothing else green about the hotel.
Right.
With us, it's the whole. We actually our corporate office buys carbon credits to offset so we have no carbon footprint.
Yep. Net neutral.
Including, I have a plane, so I have to buy credits for that. And I drive a Tesla. The hotels drive Teslas. There is no paper, like I said. We try. We've experimented with no paper bills, but people actually want a bill sometimes, so that's a little tricky. But I said, it's not perfection. The hotel in Miami was the first one, and it's an old box. And we were like, we're going to get. I think we got LEED certified. That's the leading environmental standard. But when we were doing it, we weren't sure we could do it, and we were like, should we do it? Not do it?
Because you're retrofitting a property.
We're retrofitting an old property. It's really hard to do, and the air conditioning systems were difficult. And when we did New York, there is no gas to 6th Avenue at the time. They just put it in May.
Wow.
So we had to use oil, but we used the oil burner, and we're able to switch it to gas as soon as they gave us a gas line. We can't install gas in Manhattan to open a hotel. But so I think green from the start. We use reclaimed wood. Florida has, 43 miles of beetle kill, which is a wood from Colorado that the beetles have killed. If you've gone out there to Aspen, you see the firs are dead.
Yeah.
The beetle turns the wood blue. And I saw it on TV, and people were making furniture out of it. I said, we're going to do this in the hotel. So if you go to the hotel, all the ceilings are beetle kill. All the frames of the doors, it's kind of cool. And it's kind of a beautiful gray blue. People think it's a stain. It's actually the beetle.
The beetle stained it for you.
The beetle stained it for us. And we've done, a lot of our materials, we try to keep it. I think nature's beautiful. We want to celebrate nature. We want to preserve the earth.
Yeah.
And by the way, the name One comes from it's one world, right?
Okay, yeah.
We're all responsible for each other.
I like
what
that.
I do affects you, and what they do in China with their coal affects them in California. So it's one world. So that's why I use that name. It's a very tarred name, One, because you can't trademark ONE.
Yeah. Yeah.
and O-N-E and one.
Yeah.
It's like but I didn't want to give up the concept that we're all in this together.
Right. So it's Hotel One. But
It's
you
one
can't trade-
hotel.
One hotel.
One
but you
one
can't
South
trademark.
Beach. Actually, I trademarked the font,
Okay, good.
the number in the font.
There's always a way.
There's a way. When we did W Hotels, there was a W magazine. It was
Yeah,
owned by
that's right.
Disney and
Yeah.
Fairchild, and they sued us.
Yeah.
And then I found out you can't own. You can trade. You have to do it by industry. Like
Yeah.
you can't say W Magazine gets hotels too unless they've applied for hotels.
Ah, okay.
So I could do a W Magazine, but I could do a W Hotel.
Got it. That's good.
And that was my target customer. I just said, just give me your magazines. That's
Yeah.
what we want.
Well, you're a great example, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
What an example for strong leadership and what strong leadership can do.
I should have mentioned Robin Hood, also Paul Jones, by the way.
Yeah.
I chaired the Robin Hood board for a couple of years in New York City, which fights poverty, and you have a COO on the island, John McFarland, who's a good man.
Okay.
Lives in Wisconsin. You
Yeah.
should have him on your show.
Yeah, I would love to.
But he's the chair and the founder of Robin Hood, and that's really, I've been on the board, I think, 15 years.
Yeah, they do
And
good
They
things.
do great things
Yeah.
to fight poverty. And there's, there is something for compassion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So courage, creativity,
Yeah. And compassion.
compassion, character,
Yep.
commitment.
Good traits to live by,
Yep.
no matter what generation you are.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Barry.
Thanks.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, appreciate it.
This is Leadership Perspectives Nantucket, and we'll see you next week.